There is a mountain so tall that its peak disappears into the clouds. And at the very top of that mountain, there is a nest, not a small nest. Not the kind you see tucked into the branch of a garden tree. This nest is enormous, built from thick branches and woven with dried grass, shaped over many years by the same family, generation after generation. A nest that has seen storms, lightning, and seasons that most living things never survive. And in that nest, a long time ago, an eagle was born. His name, in the old language of the mountains, meant simply, the one who sees far. But when he was young, he could not see far at all. He could barely see past the edges of the nest, and that was fine, because the world, at that point, was only as big as the nest itself. His mother brought him food, the wind rocked him gently. The clouds drifted past like slow, lazy rivers in the sky, and life was simple. But as the weeks passed, something began to change. His wings, which had once been small and tucked close to his body, began to stretch. Feathers pushed through the down, dark and firm and strong. And something stirred inside his chest, not hunger, not fear, something else. Something that pulled him toward the edge of the nest. He would stand there 4 long minutes, looking out at the world below, the forests, the rivers, the open fields, and feel a strange ache, like the sky was calling him by name, and he didn't yet know how to answer. But then, the other birds would start to talk. In the valley below the mountain lived many birds. Pigeons, sparrows, starlings, birds who had never been to the peak, never seen the view from the top, never felt the cold, clean air above the clouds. They were not bad birds, they were simply valley birds. And valley birds had valley opinions. They watched the young eagle from below with suspicious eyes. "Look at the size of those wings," one pigeon muttered to another. "What does he need wings that big for? It's showing off, is what it is." "I heard eagles think they're better than everyone," a sparrow chirped. "Flying all the way up there by themselves. Who does that? Normal birds fly together." "He'll fall," said an older starling, nodding slowly with the confidence of someone who had never tried anything new in his life. "They always do. Better to stay low, safer." The young eagle heard none of this directly. But somehow, the way they looked at him, the sideways glances, the quiet muttering, the way the other birds shuffled away when he spread his wings, he felt it. And slowly, without realizing it, he began to shrink. He stopped standing at the edge of the nest. He stopped stretching his wings in the morning wind. He began to watch the valley birds instead, the way they moved in groups, the way they called to each other, the way they never strayed too far from what they knew. And he thought, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. Maybe the pull he felt toward the open sky wasn't wisdom. Maybe it was arrogance. Maybe wanting to fly high was something to be ashamed of. So he waited. Days passed, then weeks. His mother watched him with quiet concern. She said nothing at first. She was a patient creature. Eagles always are. But one morning, when the mist was still thick and the valley birds hadn't yet woken, she sat beside him at the edge of the nest and looked out at the horizon. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she said, "What are you waiting for?" He looked at his feet. "I don't know if I should," he said quietly. "Should what? Fly? Like really fly?" "Up there." He nodded toward the open sky above the peak. She tilted her head. "Why not?" He was quiet for a moment. "Then, the other birds, they think it's wrong. They think I'm too much. That I should stay low, fit in." His mother was silent for a long time. Then she said something he would carry for the rest of his life. "Tell me," she said gently. "When you imagine yourself old, when you picture yourself looking back at the life you lived, do you think you will wish you had listened more to the sparrows in the valley?" He said nothing. Or, she continued, "Do you think you will wish you had answered when the sky called your name?" He jumped the next morning, not gracefully. Not the way you might imagine in a story where everything works out perfectly on the first try. He jumped, and for a terrifying moment, he dropped. The air hit him like a wall. His wings opened instinctively, not fully in control, just open, and the fall became something between falling and flying. He spun once, corrected, spun again, and then, somehow, leveled out. He was gliding, not soaring, not yet, but gliding. And even in that unsteady, clumsy, terrifying first flight, he felt something he had no word for. Freedom, maybe. Or maybe something bigger than freedom. Something that felt like, this is what I am. He landed in a field below, a little hard, a little awkward. He sat there for a moment, catching his breath, his heart hammering inside his chest. And then he heard them, the valley birds. Did you see that? He nearly crashed, told you he'd fall. Embarrassing, really. All that fuss about flying, and look, he can barely stay up. The young eagle sat very still, and he noticed something strange. The voices did not bother him as much as he expected, because he had done it, he had jumped. He had flown, badly, clumsily, imperfectly, but he had flown. And the sparrows who laughed had never jumped at all. He went back to the nest that evening, and the next morning he jumped again. Time passed, and the eagle flew. Every day, a little higher, a little steadier, a little more like himself, but the valley birds never stopped talking. When he flew low, they said he wasn't trying hard enough. When he flew high, they said he was showing off. When he rested, they called him lazy. When he soared 4 hours without stopping, they said he was reckless. There was no version of him that the valley birds approved of. And here is the thing about living for other people's approval. It is like trying to fill a bucket that has no bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it is never enough. You change yourself, and they find something new to criticize. You shrink yourself, and they call you weak. You grow yourself, and they call you arrogant. The target moves, always, because the truth, and this is the truth that most people spend their entire lives learning, is that people's opinions of you have almost nothing to do with you. They are a mirror of the person holding them. The sparrow who says you'll fall is really saying I'm afraid to jump. The pigeon who says you're too much is really saying you make me feel small. The starling who says stay low is really saying I wish someone had told me it was okay to go higher. Their words are about them, not you. One winter, a storm came to the mountain, not the ordinary kind. The kind that the old creatures of the forest called the Grey Silence. A storm so thick and so heavy that it swallowed everything. The sky turned the color of iron. The wind screamed between the rocks. Rain turned to ice, and ice turned to snow, and soon nothing was visible beyond a few feet in any direction. Every bird in the valley took cover. They huddled in the bushes, under leaves, deep in the hollows of old trees. They pressed together for warmth and waited for it to pass. The eagle, by now much older and much stronger, did something different. He flew into it, not because he was fearless. He was afraid, deeply afraid. The wind was violent and unpredictable. The cold cut through his feathers like something sharp. There were moments where he could not tell which way was up, but he had learned something important about storms. The valley birds survive a storm by hiding from it. Eagles survive a storm by flying above it. And after what felt like an eternity of fighting, after the wind had done everything it could to push him back down, he broke through. Above the clouds, above the storm, the sky up there was a different world entirely, still, quiet, impossibly blue. The sun, which had seemed gone forever, was right there, burning gold and warm, as if it had never left. He glided in silence for a long time, and far below him, invisible now, under the thick grey blanket of cloud, the sparrows and pigeons and starlings were still huddled in the dark, waiting for the storm to end. They would never know that above them, the sun was shining. The eagle lived a long life. He flew over oceans and deserts and mountain ranges that most creatures never see. He watched sunrises from heights where the air is thin and cold and perfect. He knew silence in places where no other voice could reach him. He was never universally loved. There were always birds who disapproved of him, who misunderstood him, who muttered things under their breath when he passed. That never fully stopped, but he stopped waiting for it to stop, because he had understood something quietly, slowly, over years of living, that he could not have understood when he was young. The birds who never stopped commenting on his life were the same birds who never really lived their own. When a person is fully absorbed in their own journey, when they are genuinely chasing something that matters to them, they don't have time to obsess over yours. They might glance over, they might feel a flicker of inspiration or a flicker of envy, but they move on, they go back to their own path. It is only the people standing still who stare, and there is something else he learned. The opinions that hurt the most, the ones that made him want to fold his wings and disappear, were almost always opinions from people whose lives he would never want to live. Think about that. The bird who told him he would fall had never left the valley floor. The bird who told him he was showing off had never felt what it was to rise above the tree line. Why, the eagle thought, would he reshape his wings based on the advice of creatures who had never used theirs? It is one of the great cruelties of life, that the people most willing to tell you what you should do are often the people least qualified to say. And the ones who have truly walked difficult paths, who have truly climbed, they tend to be gentler, more careful with their words, more aware of how little any of us really know about another person's journey. Listen to those people. Be careful about the rest. There is a question worth sitting with. Not answering quickly, not forcing, just a sitting with. Whose voice is living inside your head when you imagine doing something brave, when you think about the thing you really want to do, the life you really want to live, the path that calls to you in the quiet moments? Whose voice is the first one that speaks up to tell you why you can't? Is it yours? Or is it the voice of someone from your past? A person who was afraid and taught you to be afraid. Someone who kept themselves small and couldn't bear to watch you grow. Someone who meant well, but passed their own limits onto you like a gift they had no right to give. We carry other people's fears inside us without realizing it. We live inside cages built from words that were spoken to us years ago, in moments we barely remember. We shrink to fit rooms we were never meant to stay in. And the saddest part is, most of us don't even know we're doing it. We think the voice is ours. We think the doubt is wisdom. We think the smallness is humility. It isn't. Humility is knowing your limits honestly. Smallness is pretending to have limits you don't. There is a version of your life that the valley birds approve of. Safe, predictable, quiet, low to the ground, easy to understand, easy to accept. Nobody feels uncomfortable. Nobody is challenged. Nobody has to look at you and wonder why they're still standing still. And there is another version, yours, harder, uncertain, not always understood, sometimes lonely, sometimes misread, sometimes the subject of quiet judgment from people who have never tried what you're trying, but yours. The eagle never regretted choosing his, not because it was always beautiful. Some days were brutal, some falls were bad, some storms nearly broke him. But every time he came back, every time he shook the ice from his wings and climbed again, he was more himself than he had ever been before. And that, in the end, is the only approval that lasts. The approval of the person you see when you're honest with yourself. In the silence before sleep. In the quiet moments when no one is watching. When the voice in your chest either says, "I am living," or it doesn't. The valley birds are still there. They always will be. They will always have something to say, let them. Your wings were not built for their approval. They were built for the sky.